So as marketers move more towards outcomes, there's certain signals that I think are just being undervalued. And I think TV has an important role to play in capturing some of those signals. One of the things that we've talked a lot about in the last couple of days is the idea that the funnel is dead. And that's not a new concept, right? We've talked about that a lot. But what's interesting is I think marketers have adapted to that reality faster than the TV sell side has. And so when we talk to marketers, they're already operating in a world where a consumer can move from awareness to intent to an actual purchase in the matter of seconds, if not minutes. And so I think what's going to be really interesting is if you look at the last decade, the players that have really dominated are the tech platforms that have adapted to that reality pretty quickly. I think what's important for the TV world is how do you complement what marketers are already doing in the platform space with signals that complement what platforms already have, right? So the three types of signals that we talk a lot about are signals about what consumers are watching on TV. And there's phenomenal cross-platform signals out there, things like ACR, like set-top box data, that let you see sort of even with behind the walled gardens what consumers are tapping into. There's the browsing signals, and a little bit of a misnomer, but really what that is everything in the messy middle that consumers do, right? So whether that's seeing an out-of-home ad or a radio ad or even browsing an LLM these days, all those things influence whether a consumer considers your brand or someone else. And then obviously shopping signals online and offline, right? Those are all things that I think make up the totality of consumer experience. I think that the important thing for TV players is how do you tap into all those signals and create complementary outcomes to what marketers are getting today with the big platforms. I think that's a huge opportunity for TV.
With linear and TV converging, what new measurement frameworks are emerging to prove TV's impact beyond impressions and reach?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Look, I think this might be a little controversial, but the last couple of years, I just feel like we've over-focused the measurement conversation around currency. Look, the amount of times that we've flown out to a destination like Miami or like Puerto Rico and spent the entire day in a stuffy room talking about sort of currency on impressions. No one wants to fly out and talk about the US dollar, right? It's the air that we breathe. It's behind the scenes. It matters. It's super important, but it's not what brands at the end of the day care about, right? And so the thing that I'm really excited about on the measurement side, especially with all the AI innovation that's going on, is how do you build measurement that actually matters and makes a difference for brands? I'll give you a really good example, right? This week we met with a media strategy lead at a QSR brand, and her brand operates in 600 stores across the US. That's a big enough footprint where national TV ads make sense for her, but she knows that she's running ads in markets where they just don't have stores, right? And so what we were able to do with our Sigma platform is take a look at all those watching, browsing, buying signals that we just talked about. And so we pulled out of the 600 stores that she has across the US, which markets are those stores located in, and then pulled where her TV and her CTV ads are running across all those markets. And so what we were able to give her is the percentage of her TV budget, which are, I don't want to say wasted, but are going to markets where consumers just don't have the possibility to even shop at her stores. And so now do you call that measurement? Do you call that insights? Do you call that planning? What do you call it? The reality is that solves a real problem for her, right? What she wants to do is make sure that her ads are seen by consumers who have the opportunity to shop at her stores. And what we were able to do in that instance is use the power of big data and put a solution in front of her and just show her some data that actually drives her business forward. That's, I think, what I'm excited about over the next year or so is smart uses of AI that go beyond, did I deliver X number of impressions to am I driving outcomes that this brand actually cares about?
So I also wanted to dive in a little bit more in terms of how you make those real world connections from digital. And in particular, how is MiQ connecting CTV ads to real world behavior? And also wanted to focus in on the role of location intelligence and what role that plays in closing the loop.
Yeah, so look, we live in a digital world, right? And so I think it's easy sometimes as both media sellers and media buyers to be overly focused in digital. The reality is consumers spend more than half of their day in analog, right? Whether that's walking down the beach or, going shopping in store. All of those are environments where the consumer's in the real world and maybe they have their phone with them, but they're looking around and they're sort of experiencing the world around them. And so I think the power of location intelligence is really helping marketers uncover insights about their consumers in those environments when they're away from their screens. Whether that's, hey, did they run across my out-of-home billboard? Did they shop in my store? Did they even have the opportunity to kind of be near my store when they're served an ad? And so if you go back to that QSR example, right? What we talked about is percentage of ads served in markets that they don't have stores today. If you were to reallocate those to markets where they do have stores, well, the next natural step is how do we measure whether an ad served in those markets actually resulted in someone going into a store location. And so I think the exciting thing for me is when you're able to break that down into the different strategies you were running on a campaign, the different publishers you had on the connected TV side, and how you bring that all together, that I think is what allows marketers to get to that next level. And then I think the interesting thing is the role that location providers have to play in that world. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like 10 years ago, location data was the hottest thing in the world. And then the death of the cookie happened and privacy and all that stuff. And location's taken a little bit of a back step. I think in 2026, it's one of the most underutilized, undervalued signals of consumer behavior that's out there because it's 50% of the time that consumers have in the real world, right? And so I think, partners like Unicast, partners like Cubic, I think they have a phenomenal role to play in this new media landscape. And then I think if you're a brand considering how do I make sense of all those signals, I think you really do have to get to the source, whether that's licensing raw data feeds yourself, bringing those in-house and allowing you to run models against them to impact your campaigns, or working with partners like MiQ who bring some of those signals in-house in our Sigma platform, for example, and allow you to plan, buy, and measure campaigns sort of all in one platform.
Mo, how can brands better map cross-channel journeys that start with TV and end in real-world actions like store visits or travel?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, look, at the end of the day, in 2026 and beyond, we're in an AI-first world. The role of marketers, the role of brands, the role of agencies is all about connecting signals together. And so I think the most important thing, whether it's location data, whether it's watching data, whether it's shopping data, is how do you connect those worlds together in sort of a way that makes sense for your teams. And I think the most powerful thing is actually less the being able to bring it all together and measure every single impression. It's really you've got members of your team who care a lot about your brand, and with the power of AI for the first time are able to dig really deep in the data themselves, not have to rely on data scientists, can kind of really take a deep dive into the data themselves and provide insights for your brand. How do you enable that? How do you give them the right tool so that they can hands-on keyboard actually ask the right questions and push things into DSPs for activation? That's what we're trying to do with Sigma, right? It really is a platform, and the ideology kind of behind it is we want to give the person running the campaign the most amount of data at their fingertips in an accessible manner that they can kind of run campaigns at scale in a customized, rapid way and deliver results for their brands. So I think that's the most important thing kind of at the end of the day these days.